What's cracking, ladies and gentlemen? 49 coming out, another Give Me a Shoutcast for the OUSA Dota League Season 2. Once again, we're in the Group 2 playoffs with Momentum Dota up against TAGC. So TAGC, a team that we haven't seen play at all. I don't actually recognize any of the players. So I believe that they haven't competed in any of the ODLs before. Momentum Dota, they have played up against Weed Unit. Well, they were 2-0 due to some questionable plays in both games coming out from both teams. Weed Unit being able to pull off a very well-coordinated and well-executed death ball, especially up in Game 1 where they were able to breach high ground fairly early on. So Brewmaster and Razor being banned out by Momentum Dota, so they're banning out teamfight control heroes with the Brewmaster, as well as the 1v1 utility potentially comes out from the Razor, since Razor, in any 1v1 matchup, he's going to do very well, if not outright win the lane, just off the back of Static Link. And we've got the Faceless Void and Lycanthrope, so very standard bans coming out from the boys from both teams. But that, of course, leaves the Tidehunter, so when you ban out the Void and you leave the Tidehunter, then they just pick it up, so it's which evil you'd rather deal with. And Tidehunter, he's usually banned out over the Void, because with Void you still need the execution of being able to land a good chrono. With Tidehunter, you just press R if you've got a Blink Dagger, you blink, press R, and you're pretty much already set up the fight. And Tidehunter also has a much easier time over in the offlane, since especially if the supports rotate and you're up against a melee carry, you can walk up and bully him with the Anchor Smash. Even if you don't deal too much damage, if you've got like a level 1 Anchor Smash, if you clip him and reduce his base attack, it makes it very difficult for him to try to CS. And Doombringer, first pick coming out from TAGC, so another powerful, very powerful offlaner just because of the recovery potential he has. But of course, it does boil down to execution. You have to realize what target you're going to doom, since Momentum Dota, their last Doombringer performance by Iper87 wasn't really too crash shot. He did doom a creep at one point, so we'll see if TAGC able to pull it off a bit better. And picked up Shadow Shaman, who's currently the most powerful support hero besides the Wraith Mage and the competitive scene, just because of the sheer amount of utility he brings to the table. He scales very well in all stages of the game. Shackle set up kills in the laning phase. The Ether Shock does a huge amount of damage, and because it's got such a fast cast point and it's fairly mana efficient, it's a very effective ability to use to harass the enemy back, the offlaner back at 1, and at 2 and 3 it becomes much more potent killing ability. So Ancient Apparition being picked up as the first support over a Momentum Dota. So Ancient Apparition, king of the tri-lane because of the Chilling Touch and how much damage potential it gives you. You can always choose to max out the Cold Feet, but the Chilling Touch build does give your team a lot more DPS overall. But Cold Feet build does work well in some particular lineups. So for instance, if you want to run a support duo with the Ancient Apparition and the Naga Siren, so Naga Siren uses the Ensnare into the Cold Feet, and the Cold Feet it's guaranteed to go off, then maxing out the Cold Feet can be a bit more beneficial. But all in all, you usually pick up the Ancient Apparition to be able to give yourself that Chilling Touch and then later transition into the teamfight presence with the Ice Blast, since it completely disables regen, so a very good pick up against the Doombringer. Viper being banned out, so a very powerful 1v1 mid lane hero. You can run Viper in the tri-lane as your one position farmer, but the issue with the Viper is you have to end the game fast, since you want to have a one item advantage, and so he excels in a multi-core lineup, so a dual core or a tri-core, and so that's why you want to usually place him in the mid lane, or in a solo offlane if you're going 1v1 against their offlaner, since he can act as a bullet catcher for the rest of your team and continuously apply snares. Wraith Mage being banned out, so Shadow Shaman Wraith Mage, very powerful support duo, because you've got the setup coming in from the concussive shot, so the long range initiation which compensates for Shadow Shaman's low movement speed, and then Shadow Shaman provides the lockdown with the shackle, while Wraith Mage does the damage with an Arcane Bolt. Invoker being banned out, which is very surprising. Invoker, you don't really see any Quas Wex Invokers anymore, just because it's so greedy, and because Invoker relies on having a good start, or at least not a terrible start. Quas Wex Invoker doesn't give you any real form of base damage to try to contest last hits, and it's very difficult to control your lane, especially with the Cold Snap nerf. So nowadays you do see the Quas Exalt Invoker, where you don't even want to run him mid, you run him either in the offlane, or you run him as your safe lane farmer, or the safe lane offlane, because you want to guarantee him being able to get farm. And so if you run him as the tri-lane farmer, the advantage of that is when your supports, once he picks up a few levels, your supports can leave him alone. And so Invoker with a few levels in the Exalt becomes dangerous enough that he can contest for CS and he can control the lane quite effectively. And the Outworld Destroyer being banned out, so we've got a lot of mid bans coming up from both teams, the Razor, the Viper, as well as the Outworld Destroyer. So these are heroes that win the 1v1 matchup off the basis of their abilities. And so the Outworld Destroyer, he's a very greedy mid pickup, though. He needs a lot of farm, a lot of experience before he really starts to take off, since you don't want to go for any points in your Arcane Orb until you've got your Essence Aura maxed out, but they're going for a Dragon Knight, so much more reliable mid. in the sense that he comes online much quicker, since Dragon Knight with level 6 with the EDF as well as the Dragon Tail can help set up kills. Owl Destroyer, you can't really set up kills with him unless you either combo with the Astral, so if you have like someone like a Mirana, or if you decide to burn off the Sandy's Eclipse, but that's a very expensive kill. So unless you could transition that into a tower, the enemy team can capitalize. So Dragon Knight, very effective mid lane hero in the sense it's incredibly difficult to lose mid as a Dragon Knight, just because you're so damn tanky that just through sheer bottle crowing, you'll always be able to break even in lane. And if you've got supports being able to stack up creeps for you over in the jungle, if you do have a very difficult mid lane, you can always recover by clearing out the stacks very efficiently using that Dragon's Breath. And so Rubick as a secondary support pickup from Momentum Dota, not a huge fan of the Rubick unless you have a very aggressive support to combo him with. The Ancient Apparition, he does provide you a lot of damage with the Chilling Touch, and so you've got that going for you with that particular combo, as well as the setup from Telekinetic Lift into the Cold Feet. But you usually want to pick up a much more aggressive support hero, such as, if, for instance, Rubick with the Mirana, you lift into Arrow, so it makes it a much more efficient support duo. Since Rubick, he provides you a lot of lockdown, but he's very slow, squishy, and he doesn't do that much damage on his own. And so that's somewhat mitigated with the Chilling Touch, but it looks like TAGC really showing their hands. They've got 4 very powerful pushing heroes, with the Jakiro to synergize with the Shadow Shaman. So Jakiro provides you a lot of harassment damage in lane by utilizing the Liquid Fire to harass the enemy hero back. And that also cuts the attack speed of the tower in half, so that means that your pushes become a lot more effective. Doombringer counts as a pusher because he could eat either the Alpha Wolf or the Wildkin to provide that damage aura or the armor aura to your creeps, or he could choose to eat the Troll, summon the Skeleton to be able to serve as a pushing hero, as well as the fact that he's very durable and he helps facilitate pushes. Since if he's alone against a single hero, he dooms and runs up with Scorched Earth, he's able to get a solo kill, the rest of his team can rotate in, or he could start split pushing on his own, force out a few TPs and he could back off while the rest of his team takes another tower. But TAGC, they're really relying on being able to take these early towers. So Momentum Dota, with that Tidehunter pickup, it really does throw a span in the works. The Tidehunter gets a good start over on the Dire off lane. If he's able to get his Ravage up in a reasonable amount of time, he could stop these pushes stone cold. And so Templar Assassin's the mid pickup. So Templar Assassin is a very easy lane up against the Dragon Knight. She should completely destroy him in lane, just because with the refractions, she'll be able to out CS the Dragon Knight. Once she picks up level 2 with the Sideblade, since Dragon Knight's a melee hero, he's constantly going to be eating the Sideblade spill damage, and so it makes it very difficult for him to be able to contest CS. It also means that since Dragon Knight relies on his Dragon's Blood passive, so the passive regen and more importantly the passive armor, Templar Assassin Sideblade, the spill damage is calculated off the armor of the creep that you hit, and so it means that Dragon Knight's Dragon's Blood, which he's reliant on, is completely neutralized in this lane. The HP regen is nice, and through Bottle Crowing he still will be able to break even, so it'll be difficult for the TA to kill the Dragon Knight unless he makes a significant misplay, since you've got the Dragon Tail. And so it's another reason why Dragon Knight's so durable in the mid lane, is if you do get too close to him, he could bash you and try to turn the gank around, especially with TP support coming in, or he could simply run the hell back to his tower. And so Luna as the 5th ban coming out from TAGC, so they're banning out aggressive tri-lane heroes that would synergize well with the Ancient Apparition and the Rubick. And Luna can set up the gank with the Lucent Bee to give Rubick enough time to be at a close distance to get that lift off, and then with the Chilling Touch on all 3 heroes, Luna can run them down with right clicks, and Silence have been banned out just because he's able to completely shut down their lineup just by pressing R with the Global Silence. And we've got a Bloodcyka pickup, so we're going to be seeing what looks like a Bloodcyka tri-lane as his tri-lane farmer with the Doom off lane and the Dragon Knight mid. They could decide to mix it up a bit and have Bloodcyka go mid up against the TA, but TA has a very easy time against the Bloodcyka, and Dragon Knight and tri-lane doesn't really offer you much. You can also run him in the off lane as well if you want to go into solo 1v1, but Dragon Knight most likely going to be the mid pickup. Since the Doombringer and the Bloodcyka, you can off lane with the Bloodcyka, but he needs CS to be effective, so you want to send the Doom in, since Doom is much more difficult to kill with the Scorched Earth, especially if he starts with boots first, and with the Devourer he could make up for farm somewhat. So Bloodcyka in the tri-lane, a very powerful hero in pub games because it's difficult for the enemy team to coordinate effectively against him. Bloodcyka, if he gets a few charges up of Thirst, he does become an absolute terror because you can't flee from a Bloodcyka, he'll have vision of you, you can't juke him. And he could always engage, he could always disengage and then re-engage with the movement speed he gets. Means that if your team's able to coordinate fire and bring down a target that the Bloodcyka is a melee range to, it'll be to keep him alive, so it becomes very difficult to control the Bloodcyka in these fights. And with the Blood Rage buff, so you no longer can purge it off, and it makes Bloodcyka very powerful in the sense that you could silence enemy heroes and they're not able to cast any abilities. So if you silence the Rubick or the AA or the Tidehunter, all 3 of them are completely useless, and you could kill Tidehunter before the Kraken Shell pops, since Kraken Shell won't dispel the Blood Rage. And it also means that as a carry position Bloodcyka, if you Blood Rage yourself and activate your BKB, you're no longer going to purge off the damage buff. So that was one of the issues with Bloodcyka as a 1 position or a 2 position hero, before the rework is the fact that if you had to go for a BKB so you wouldn't get control in these fights, but if you did go for one, you'd purge off your only steroid. And so Wraith King is the final pickup, so it's going to be a carry position Wraith King with the Ancient Apparition, the Rubick, and I really like this lane because you've got two very reliable ways to set up the Cold Feet. And so you've got the Red Fire Blast, which is probably the most efficient single target stun in the game. At all levels, it does cost 140 mana, but you've got 2 seconds of stun, then 2 seconds of snare on top of that. And so just with the Red Fire Blast and Ice Vortex, Ancient Apparition can start the Cold Feet. But with the Rubick there as well, it becomes very difficult for any hero called out position to survive. And the advantage of the Wraith King in that farming position is if he reaches a point of critical mass where he's so farmed that you have to invest too many resources to kill him, he's just going to reincarnate back. And every time you get to reincarnate off in a fight, if the rest of your team is still alive, that's a one fight for you. So they're just going to introduce the players from the team. As Momentum, Dota, group up as 5 for a smoke gag into the enemy jungle. iPro87 going to be on the Ancient Apparition, so he's been kicked off from Doom duty over in the off lane due to his bad performance. Let's get it. The captain going to be in the Templar Assassin, so he's going to be the mid lane player, choosing not to start with any regen at all. No tango has been pulled to him. I'm assuming the AA or the Rubick will pull them tango since they've got 4 each. And he really does need the some form of sustainability in lane. The smoke has worn off. Jesus on the Goonsack going to be over on the 5 position Rubick. GS Donkey, this time he's going to be the offlaner over on the Tidehunter. And Pontown going to be that 1 position Wraith King, choosing to start with the Quelling Blade. You usually do want to start with Stout Shield over in the Wraith King, just because he has such low armor, he's so slow, so he'll eat a lot of right clicks in lane. And actually it looks like Meat Shield's called out with the Ray Fire Blast. Gush lands on him as well, so it's a level 1 Gush, but it results in the kill, so very happy with that. Meat Shield, the support player over for TAGC, takes a fall. Kajani going to be the 1 position player over in the Bloodcyka. Mirana's Llama going to be the Shadow Shaman. Chose his skill Shackle at 1. You usually want to hold your skill point until you see what kind of lane you're up against. Smell Freak going to be the mid lane player over in the Dragon Knight. Choosing to start with the Stout Shield, despite the fact that Sideblade damage will completely ignore it, and the Templar's not going to be right-clicking you anyway, she'll be right-clicking the creep, so a bit of a waste of gold coming up from him. And T-Dub's going to be on the Doombringer, starting with Boots first and the Scorched Earth, so once again, skilling your ability before you get in lane. You always want to wait till you see what you're up against before you skill an ability, since if you've got the hotkey down, it's Control Q, Control W, Control E. You can use it to quickly level up your ability once you see what you're dealing with. But Dragon Knight, he's got the Breathe Fire at 1, so very standard mid build coming up for him. Let's Get It should have an incredibly easy mid lane. But Dragon Knight, he's going to have to do his best to try to recover. So choosing to throw a few right clicks over and Smell Freak already, loses all his positive refraction charges. So no in the defense there. Jakiro with Liquefy at 1, he's going to be playing a lot more aggressively. They know Titan chose to skill Gush at 1, so even though he's got a double damage rune, you got to be playing aggressively against him, because he's at his weakest right now. Once he gets a few points up in the Yank Smash and a few points up in the Kraken Shell, you can't gank him just because you're not going to deal enough damage to kill him. You don't have enough magic damage coming out from the 2 support heroes, and the Bloodseeker's relying on right clicks, so you're not going to be able to kill him that way. So you have to kill him now before he starts to get a few points up in the Yank Smash. Since the Dire offlane has a much harder time, he doesn't have the hard camp that the Radiant offlaner does to be able to leech the XP from, since he could pull it to control the Creep Equilibrium. Creep Equilibrium is also pushed very far forward in T-Dub's favor, so he's got a free level 2. And he's got a CS off the back of that. So Jesus on the Goonsack and iPro87, they're going to be playing a lot more aggressively. And we've actually got a sentry being placed by the Doombringer to block off the pull camp. So the support should have had sentries on the get-go. Looks like, yeah, Rubick has the sentry. So he should be able to de-ward this very easily, since it's an incredibly obvious sentry ward's placed to block off the creep camp. You usually want to place it inside trees or in vision to the enemy team. It's a lot more difficult for them to try to spot it out. Let's get it. 9 for 3. So twice the CS, more than twice the CS than the Dragon Knight. And more denies as well. Denies are much more important, especially against a hero like a Dragon Knight when you're in this particular matchup, since he's having a difficult time enough as it is, just even getting close to the creep wave. If you're able to get more experience than him as well, get that critical level 6 before he gets his EDF on, you can go for a kill attempt once you get your side trap, or at least make it very difficult for him to stay in lane. Smell Freak, he's taking a lot of damage, so the Stout Shield is starting to pay for itself in the sense that Let's Get It chose to play very aggressively from 1. But usually, unless you're against, in this particular matchup against the TA, you don't want to go for the Stealth Shield. You want to rush your bottles as quickly as possible. T-Dubs eats a Red Fire Blast, the Cold Feet, as well as the Telekinetic Lift, and he takes a fall. Very easy execution coming up from Momentum. Dota is able to take that kill. He should not be in vision of the enemy team or in range of the enemy team. If he's within 600 units for the Red Fire Blast, he's going to be taking a fall, especially if the supports are there. And with no safety ward, which is another issue that he's having. Well, perhaps it hasn't been de-warded, since there's no sentry ward being placed out. Mirana's Llama playing a bit far forward, so GS Donkey, he's been zoned out. This is what they needed to do from level 1. But since he's level 3 now, they can't even go for a kill attempt, even if they wanted to, just because they don't deal enough damage to kill him. They don't have enough lockdown. Since if he could get the Anchor Smash on the 2 of them, or if he could, so long as he is able to land the Anchor Smash over on the Bloodseeker, if he's right-clicking him, he should be able to survive any gank attempts. Even though he chose not to start with boots, he's got enough of boots now. So they really had to play a lot more aggressively on GS Donkey from the get-go, but they weren't able to do so, so he's going to be having a fairly easy lane, and the advantage of having the Tidehunter in the Dire off lane is the fact that you can stack engines to recover if you choose to do so, but we've got smoke rotation coming up from Momentum Dota, Iper 87 and Jesus on the Goon Sack rotating on Smile Freak. Smile Freak's got a point up in the Dragon Tail, so he can turn around and try to go for a stun attempt on 1. Since they won't have enough damage to kill him during the Teleconnect lift duration. But they're playing very far forward. Jason the Goonsack initiates with the Teleconnect lift. Let's get it, runs from far forward. Cold Feet doing a lot of damage. You turn around, go for a stun attempt over. Let's get it with the haste rune, but with that haste rune, that should be a kill. Smile Freak at least turn around for the stun. There we go, he does it. He's got bottle charge, he should be bottle charging up right now. It could have actually kept himself alive. His bottle charge is a bit too late, and Let's Get It is able to get the kill. He could have at least made that a trade if he'd bottle charged, since you see how low Let's Get It gets. And the refraction only just went off cooldown. So if he popped that refraction, if he'd chosen to chase him, if he'd cut him through the trees, juked him through the trees here with the fire breath, could have actually at least turned it around or gone for a retaliatory kill. But instead wasn't able to capitalize on that, and Liquid Fire is actually being used on the, looks like it spilled over to the creep, so it's pushing the lane forward. But Jesus on the Goons, but it looks like the Shadow Shaman, Miranda's Llama, he's going to be stacking and pulling, so he's just doing a single pull through, but they haven't eaten through the trees there, so they can't do the double pull through. So that pull actually damages their lane, because the creep equilibrium is actually going to push forward now, since you've got a creep wave and a half pushing forward, but he actually leashes only the range creep, so that actually helps out the creep equilibrium by huge amounts. The range creep's the one doing the majority of the damage. And Let's Get It with that kill. Dragon Knight's having an awful time. He's a hero that usually breaks even mid. He should be playing a lot more aggressively with the Breed Fire. He has to spam it out every time he can get a creep and get some spillover damage over on Let's Get It, so that's the only way he could try to find farm this lane. He can't attempt to go in for right clicks without eating a whole bunch of damage, so he has to control the lane the other way. If he's good enough to be able to spot out when the Templar Assassin's refraction on, you can actually click on her when you're in lane just to see if she's got any defensive charges up. Just use your Fire Breath then, as he's doing right now, and to keep her low, since it makes it much more difficult for her to go for a gank attack. She still does have the refraction, but once you hit 6 with the EDF, while he's set in the top lane, Doombringer once again caught way out of position, and Smile Freak in the mid lane taking a fair amount of damage. But Let's Get It, choosing not to dive. He's got the regen rune, so just doing a bit of spillover damage. And Hometown with the Trent up on him, looks like he's saving up, probably going to be going towards the Midas. He could choose to go for a Blink Dagger as well, but Hand of Midas is absolutely fantastic on the Wraith King, because he lacks attack speed as a strength hero. And you want as many levels of them as possible. You want to get your level 2 Reincarnate. It's a level 1 Reincarnate. It's the longest cooldown ability in the game. And every time you Reincarnate up, if you can get it off successfully in a fight, that's a 1 fight for you. Especially in the early stages of the game, where the enemy team, they can't really afford to ignore you as they can in the later game. They can't really kite you either. So Bloodcyka, he's off to a good start. Nowhere near the amount of CS as the Wraith King. Actually, he's only got 14 for 0. I don't know why he has such a low CS. All things considered, especially with GS Donkey hanging all the way back, and with the Quelling Blade as well. Bloodcyka's got an excellent animation and a fairly high base attack point. It should be incredibly easy for him to find CS, so questionable plays coming up from TAGC already. T-Dubs with 2 deaths to his name over the offlaner. The offlaner has only one job, that's not to die. But unfortunately, with the aggressive tri-lane coming up from Momentum Dota, with a huge amount of kill power coming out, especially since their carry can set up kills, it makes it very difficult for the Doombringer to stay in lane, so he should be playing much more passively. Since right now, Ponton can go with the Ray Fire Blast, and the Ancient Apparition can come in with the Cold Feet as well as the Chilling Touch. He chose to skip the Ice Vortex. I disagree with this, since if you're gonna go for the max Chilling Touch build, you want 1 point in the Vortex because of the extra snare. T-Dubs looks like he took a little bit of damage. Actually turns around to Doom, and Ponton doesn't have to reincarnate. That's going to be a free kill, unless they should be able to get the deny off. But nonetheless, it delays the carries timing by quite a large amount. There we go. They actually get the deny. But so T-Dub's able to find his recovery that way. And the lack of denies coming out, since he's only got 7, with the fact that the Doombringer has to be playing incredibly far back, and with the Quelling Blade, you should have a lot more denies than that. I mean, every time when you're in the lane, you're attacking. Every time the creep gets below half HP, you want to auto deny your creep wave, just because it makes it a lot more easier for your supports to be able to deny as well. They're also there, and it means that the creep wave is always going to be taking more. Your creep wave is sustaining more damage than they're dealing out, and so the creep equilibrium is pushing closer towards your tower. You never ever want the creep wave to be pushing in this kind of region, especially for the Radiant offlane. They're getting way too much. You want to keep it in this area, and so that way to play way more far forward. But let's get it with a double damage rune. Very quick kill over in Smile Freak. He exploded before he even had a chance to respond. Kajani actually rotated mid as well. He chose to go for treads over in the Bloodcyka. 2 points in the Bloodbath, which I disagree with. If you're in that safe lane role where you're not being harassed at all. You only need 1 point in the bloodbath. You want your maxed out thirst as soon as possible, just so that you can come along for these ganks. A point of difference in the thirst makes a huge difference when you're going in for these gank attempts and when you're going in for these kills. And so the fact that he's got 2 points off the bloodbath means that he's not going to have the level 4 thirst until level 8 at the earliest, and that really does delay a lot of his killing power. Bloodcyka's hero that's reliant on snowballing and momentum, and if you're not able to snowball on a snowballing hero, then you could have drafted someone a lot more reliable. You're not executing your draft effectively. T-Dubs now rotates in the mid lane as well, so everyone's cannibalizing the Dragon Knight's farm, which is incredibly bad, especially considering the fact that he died with EDF up. And so that means he's got a minute before he's able to do anything useful, and he's already having such a difficult lane with 2 deaths to his name. The fact that he will it'll be even more difficult for him to recover, especially with everyone stealing his farm or at least leeching his EXP. But while I say that, Invis, let's get it. He turns around the Meld Strike over in Smile Free. He's followed up the Telekinetic Lift as well as the Cold Feet, and he's going to be taking a fall once again. So Jason the Goonsack takes the kill this time. So 0 for 3 over in the Dragon Knight. 2 of their cores aren't performing well, and the Bloodcyka is incredibly underfarmed. There is no excuse for him to be this underfarmed, especially when GS Donkey's been playing so far back. So this trade lane was a complete failure for the players over in TAGC. Momentum Dota, that trade lane was able to achieve much more. The supports aren't even rotating, so if your supports aren't winning you the lane, they should be winning you another lane. Otherwise, the support players aren't doing their job, since you've got 20 minutes before you start to taper off, unless you're able to farm a fair amount of farm. So you have to win the first 20 minutes of the game. It's your job as 4 position as 5 position. So if your carry hero isn't able to CS effectively, or if the offlaner, you can't go for a kill attempt on the offlane, then go for a kill attempt on the mid lane. With the Liquid Fire, you can quickly purge off for the defensive refraction charges over in the Templar Assassin, and without the refraction charges, she's very easy to kill, so she's choosing to go for treads. Holding onto her gold, could be going towards either a Hand of Midas, which is the RTZ build, does a lot of work over in the Templar Assassin, especially if you go treads, or could be going towards the phase boots. With the fact that he's picked up the treads, it looks like he's going for the Drums of Endurance, so choosing not to go for greed, being able to provide him a lot more aggressive capability early on, since he's going for these early clashes. Being pinged out, very greedy offlaner ward being placed there. Looks like that was a reward that was placed. Sentry has also been deployed as well, so they're going in for the D ward. But like I said, Pontown went for a blink dagger, so he's playing very aggressively. So Momentum Dota, they're not taking any chances. They don't want to take it to the late game. They want to end the game as quickly as possible. Morana's Llama fleeing for his life. Pontown, he's got reincarnated up, so he doesn't give a shit if he dives. And with the blink dagger, he blinks forward, catches that Morana's Llama. He should have actually tried to juke him through there, since he knew that there was a blink dagger online. And Rubick's able to steal the kill with the Fade Bolt. Pontown chose to go for early points over the Vampiric Aura. Usually, if you're going into the carry position role, you want to go for more points in the Mortal Strike, since it's actually a fairly effective crit once you get a few points up in it. But the advantage of going for a few points in the Vampiric Aura is it gives you a lot more pushing capability, since you're able to sustain your HP. But the drawback to having early points in the Vampiric Aura is it pushes your creep wave forward, so it gave T-Dubs a huge amount of free EXP and free gold, and the creep wave is always pushing forward. Looks like he's building towards the Mechanism. He's been fairly delayed so far. But with the Devourer, especially since he chose to max it, he's going to be able to find his recovery farm. With the Doombringer in the offlane, you usually want to max out the Scorched Earth, because it gives you a lot more guaranteed damage, as well as the huge increase in the duration. So Rubick actually disconnected from the game, so he's having a few PC issues. Just going to quickly check the gold and the XP graph for both teams. 7,500, so about 8,000 gold lead in favor of Momentum Dota, and about 4,000 EXP lead, so they're off to a fantastic start. And that's just due to the fact that not only are they kills, but the CS, which is much more important. Each kill is worth about 6 creeps in terms of gold for the hero that kills them. And so even with the kills on top of that, Templar Assassin's got about 90 CS if you want to calculate it based off the amount of kills that she's been involved in, as well as the assist gold, with the tower as well. Compared to the Bloodcyka, who's got 20 CS, there's absolutely no reason at all he should be this underfarmed, especially considering the fact that Tidehunter was constantly playing very defensively and very passively, since he knew that the supports were there to go for a kill attempt. And so his CS is absolutely atrocious, especially as the one position hero out on a snowballing hero like a Bloodcyka. When you're playing snowballing hero that's dependent on finding the first big item or getting that critical level 6, you want to get every single creep in the lane and deny as much as possible. If you're not able to do so, then it's creating too much friction for you to be able to execute your lineup. Because by the time you're online, it's too late, and you've missed that critical window. T-Dubs, he's the Cold Feet to Gush. Meld Strike, and turns around with a Doom over at Hyper87, so it's a wasted Doom. It's not going to do enough damage to kill the Ancient Apparition, and that's a 100-second cooldown being blown, so they can actually group up and take the Tier 2 tower. Looks like there's enough. He's got the Reincarnate off cooldown, but he's going towards the Armor Muzigium, but he doesn't have enough mana to use it. So Arcane Boot's already being used by both the supports. Hyper87, he's rotated over to the mid lane, he's picked up his level 6, so now he's got the Ice Blast to contribute to these fights. And if he's able to latch that on the Doombringer, since Doombringer is the one that Scorched Earth, so he's got the only one is the reliable HP sustain, as well as the fact that he's going to be carrying mech later on. He'll be able to do a lot of work in these fights. Also, interesting to note, they chose to pick up the Bloodcyka when there's an Ancient Apparition available. The Shadow debuff will completely negate Thirst. And if Bloodcyka isn't able to heal up through Thirst, he loses the only reason why you pick up the hero. As in these engagements, similar to a Slark with the Shadow Dance regen, he is completely dependent on the Bloodbath regen to stay alive in these fights. And so it lets him play very aggressively, he can run in for a kill, go for that kill attempt, even if he's incredibly low. So long as he's able to get the kill or be within melee range, he'll regen from the Bloodbath, he can then turn around, disengage, or re-engage again. And so if you're denying him his Bloodbath ability, the regen he gets from that, the only reason why you pick up the Bloodcyka in this case then, is to use the Blood Rage on GS Donkey so he can't get a good Ravage off. But he has actually almost got enough for a Blink Dagger, so he'll be the Blink Ravage on you before you get the Blood Rage off. And T-Dubs once again spotted up, but let's get him Pwntown. Very slow reaction coming out from them. He pops to the Refraction, being caught up with the Shackle. EDF, 1 beam popped. Ancient Apparition Ice Blast is going to latch on 2, catch it out on 3 as well. T-Dubs takes a fall as Pwntown, he's hanging around, he's got the Reincarnate, so he doesn't really care if he dies. Let's get it, however, we'll be taking a fall. The Macropire being able to bring him down. Rubick comes in, steals off one of his abilities. Looks like the Ether Shock the Hex being stolen off from him. Pwntown's now back with the main coming, the 75%, this snare coming up from the Reincarnate, and Kajani's taking a fall. There's no way to escape from that. Michio as well will be taking a fall as he blinks forward. He's got the Ray Fire Blast available in what looks like about a second or two. Throws it out now, and that's a complete team wipe in exchange for a Templar Assassin. Things are already falling far out of the reach for TAGC Dota to be able to recover. And that's an 11,000 gold lead in favor of Momentum Dota, and about 7,500 EXP. They should be able to do a lot of chip damage over in the tier 2. The advantage is the fact that they're low enough level that they will respawn before they can completely kill the tier 2 if they choose to group up and defend it, which it looks like they're doing so. And we've got a ping coming out from the Ancient Apparition. Hyper87 saying, guys, we should back the hell out now. They can still choose to group in on us, but the Armlord Medigian up on the Skeleton, on the Wraith King. So 14-minute Armlord Medigian, especially with the fact that the support heroes, Shadow Shaman, about 650 HP up on him, so 3 or 4 right clicks on top of the Ray Fire Blast, and he's taking a fall. Jakiro is very tanky, but even then, he can't just sit there and tank the amount of damage. So you get 475 HP as well when you get the Armlet, and since he chose to max go for early points in the Vampiric Aura, he's able to sustain the HP degen, which is usually the only drawback of the Armlet. So that's the reason why you usually only see the Armlet Medigian up on heroes. But while I say that, Small Freak runs forward with the Dragon Tail, but he just went on his own and takes a fall. 3 feed coming up from him. There's 3 heroes there with the Templar Assassin also rotating in. So no idea what he was doing that far forward on his own, especially with no teammates there. And with no vision at all. He had vision of the 3 heroes over in the top lane, still continued to run forward. Rubick now has a Blink Dagger, and the game's already gone completely out of control. Momentum Dota have picked up enough momentum from the look of it. But they start wrestling down these towers. And with the gold lead as well as the EXP lead, heavily in their favor. In terms of net worth, their entire team has got higher net worth. The 5-position Ancient Apparition has more net worth than your 1-position Bloodcyka. This game is already slipping the reach of them to be able to recover. If they are able to get a good tier 3 defense, since there aren't any good pushes over in Momentum Dota, they could try to recover off the back of that, but considering the fact that their entire lineup is drafted around Deathball push, whether you take a kill, then you take a tower, and then you rinse and repeat, it's a lineup that only plays well if you're ahead. The instant you get behind, you start to fall apart, especially with the Wraith King, since if they blow everything they have, they'll just barely be able to kill him. And then, if he's got Reincarnate up, he doesn't care then, he's providing the snare, so Templar Assassin can then go for the right clicks. So when you're playing Wraith Kings at 1-position role, you want to make sure you have another form of physical DPS to capitalize on the Reincarnate. So that's why the Templar Assassin and the Wraith King synergize so well. Since if you focus at TN, the Wraith King will run up in your face and stun you and stab you. If you focus on the Wraith King, then not only is everything going to fall apart, while I say that, 3-man Blink Ravage. Doom is on the Rubick, so wrong target to Doom in this particular fight. T-Dub's falling for his life, Side Trap being used. Let's get a choose to commit for this if he really wants to, but choosing not to dive. And great execution coming up from GS Donkeys. He catches out 3 with the Blink Ravage. And so it's a lose-lose scenario for TAGC. If they choose to focus on the Wraith King, if you bring him down, he'll Reincarnate back in. Small Freak, once again, runs very far forward and feeds. No reason for him to be that far forward at all, especially when you're playing this far behind. So massive misplays coming out from TAGC. Very unsure what the rationale behind these decisions is. Since when you're playing from behind, you don't want to give them any more kills. You're already playing from behind. It's difficult enough for you to recover this game as it is. It might already have reached that point of no return. Wraith King, 2,150 gold up on him. So you can choose to go for whatever you want to. He can go for a BKB, but Wraith King, you usually don't necessarily have to go for a BKB until you've picked up another big item. Since you want to justify the fact that they're having to blow these stuns on you, you want to draw as much fire as possible. And so once you pick up another damage item, so he's got the armor, he could choose to pick up another damage item, or he could choose to go for the BKB if he really wants to. But with the state of the game being what it is, they will, even if they do control him with CC, they will just barely have enough to kill him. And that means that the Templar Assassin isn't eating all those stuns and all the control coming up from them. So Mass Serpent Ward's up from Shadow Shaman, hasn't used them at all this entire game. That's just because he only hit level 6 about a minute ago, so 16-minute level 6 over into Shadow Shaman is a hero that needs a fair amount of investment and gold as well as experience before he really takes off. You ideally want Arcane Boots up on him as soon as possible. That's because he chews through mana so quickly with his abilities. And you want level 7, so he has at level 4 Ether Shock. He blinks forward the Ancient Apparition Blast over Mirage Llama. Mirage Llama's going to be the first target to fall. Doom and Rupture both being on a Wraith King with Reincarnate up. The massive tactical error coming out from the boys in TAGC as they blow the stun to the hero that wants to die, and T-Dub's going to get cleaned up by Let's Get. He turns off a few more right clicks, knowing that he's completely doomed. Meat Shield eats the stun to the face, so he's tanking up that stun. Small Freak going for a kill attempt over GS Donkey, but with the Anchor Smash, making it very difficult. He actually lived through it, never mind. The Creep Wave is able to clean him up. And Pawntown is godlike as they trade 2 for 4. Actually, it looks like 2 for 5. Shadow Shaman respawn back in since he's such low level. And the Rubick died to the Radiant during all of this, so he could have been tanking a few tower hits. Wasn't really too sure what happened there, especially with the Blink Dagger. With that being said, Pawntown, he's died once this game. That was due to the Doom very early on. Blue is Reincarnate for that, but with 3.8k, he doesn't really care. He's very happy to take that loss. He could go towards an Assault Cuirass if he wants to be completely unkillable, since with the armlet on and with the share amount of armor that the AC gives you, they will... I don't think they'll have enough damage to be able to kill him just off the back of nukes. They'll have to rely on their right clicks as well, but when they're going on the Wraith King, the Titan can blink in with the Ravage, and with the Anchor Smash, completely turn the fight. Actually, Ravage wasn't even used in that fight. That's how decisively they were able to win it, just off the back of the Ancient Apparition Ice Blast latching on 3, then the Wraith King blinking up ahead. He's picked up the Reaver, so he's going towards the Harder Tarask. Very questionable item choice coming up from the Wraith King. I really dislike the Harder Tarask over on the Wraith King because it makes you survivable, but it doesn't give your team anything. And it doesn't really give you all that much as well, since with the Reincarnate, you already have 2 lives. You don't need to build more physical you don't need to build more HP, you need to build more EHP through the Assault Cuirass, and while I say he blink dodges Macropire. So they know that this is happening just because of the Thirst. And Pawntown actually has to be very careful. Kajaki is called out immediately with the Ravage, and the Ravage lashes on 3. Doom once again being used in the Wraith King. They have an obsession on dooming the wrong target. T-Dubs is instantly blown up. They're able to get a kill over on Pawntown. He should be able to. He's never mind. He's denied. Small Freak now going to be taking another loss as a side trap being deployed as well. GS Donkey going for some body blocks. Macropire was stolen and returned. So fire on fire. Jesus and the Goon Tech able to clean that up, and Let's Get It. They should be able to take Roshan to the back of that. GG being called 19 minutes and 36 seconds in. TAGC have had enough. They're tapping out for game number 2. Momentum Dota. Very good execution coming up from them, but that being said, they're more or less playing off the mistakes that TAGC are doing. Dota's a game with a team that makes the least amount of mistakes, a team that wins. And so you never want to make mistakes unless you absolutely have to, or if you're forced into doing so. So just going to be taking a quick break and loading on, and then we'll load on into game number 2, so stay tuned for more Dota.